Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and we've got a bit of a spicy one for you this time around. As a resident melee enjoyer, I did go ahead and try out the new Dual Strike as an Occultist and Strength stack. So the new Dual Strike basically is similar to the old Dual Strike, but it forces you to use two different weapons, so you can't have the same weapon type, and then it scales a lot on your main hand and scales your attack speed off of your offhand. So it does force you to build a little bit differently, a little bit weirder, but the result is quite powerful and pretty fun to build into. And it's pretty much everything that PoE should be. It's just making you think outside the box, and it has a lot of power in it. You just got to find that power and then build into it. And I decided to do an Occultist with some Chaos Explosions and Strength stack with the Replica Alberon boots. They are fairly affordable this league, so 3 or 4 divines when I first started the build. And then I really wanted some Chaos Pops in my build for, I don't know, a few builds now. I've been thinking, yep, Chaos Pops would be cool. Combine the two into Strength stack Occultist as Dual Strike with this Replica Alberon boots, and then using a Paradoxica. Since it has dog shit attack speed, it gets completely fixed by having an offhand that is very fast, and your main hand being Paradoxica. So I pretty much never use a Paradoxica, and I've picked up one of the most niche sort of uses for a Paradoxica ever, as it's a Chaos one with no attack speed, so it's just terrible. It's very cheap. And then in the offhand we've got a very fast Claw that is all of our attack speed based off of. You can do similar concepts with something like a Brightbeak in the offhand, which is a very budget version of that, or you could do a replica of Frost Breath in your main hand in case you can't get a Paradoxica. That works just as well, because the idea is to have double damage from our main hand, and then scale with Strength stack and have our offhand do all of our attack speed scaling, since this is what the new Dual Strike is like. The result is extremely powerful. I think I did Dual Strike last league or the league before, something like that, and I had maybe 10 to 20 million DPS for my Slayer, I think it was. And that was pretty good, and that took on end game content, and it was decent enough, but it is a bit of a melee build, and it does have its problems. This one here, once again a melee build, but it's got maybe 5 to 10 times the damage at the moment. I think I'm sitting at 150 to 200 million DPS right now, because Strength stack is very powerful, especially with Replica Alberons, especially this league, with all the free strength you can get through charms and the new sub ascendancy. And then on top of that, you take care of all of the weakness of some of your attacking and your weapons and your skill with the scaling of this new Dual Strike. It gives you a lot of extra damage on your main hand, and then you have no penalty for wearing something slower or shitter, and thus you just get a lot of attack speed from your offhand. Not really sure what else there is to say. It can be done as other things. Occultist is a pretty powerful tool for these Replica Alberon builds, I think, because you can get some really good chaos scaling, you fix some chaos resists, you get additional curse, and then on top of that, traveling is not too bad because you convert a lot of the travel nodes into strength nodes. This is the most strength I think I've ever had in a strength stacking character, or even any stat stacking character, the highest single stat. Somewhere at around 2400, and the character will end at something like 2500, but sky's the limit with the amount of budget you can throw at these things. People have been doing strength stack and getting like 3k pretty comfortably this type of league. And yeah, as you can see, it ends up being a bit of a flail, similar to the Double Strike build I did, but not quite as much because it is much harder hitting. So for the most part, we are one-shotting a lot of things, and it doesn't have quite as much flail potential, but it certainly still can. If you have a lot of attack speed and things to attack that don't quite die, then it can be a bit of a flail monster once again. This is with an Echo Shrine, and just kind of an example of what a tooltip can be. I don't think I've ever had a tooltip anywhere close to 20 million like the one we saw here. So aside from that, think there's not too much else to discuss. It's just a very nice way of building a dual strike. It's pretty versatile. There's lots of different ways to do it. I'd say it's one of the nicest strike skills right now, one of the better scaling strike skills, and then the results will speak for themselves. So with that, I'll go ahead and show you what the character looks like, and hopefully in the next video, some real serious uber bossing, quite likely build of the league status for damage. So here we are, currently level 91, Occultist, the Flailing, 2400 strength, but like I said, we'll probably hit about 2500 once I've got my last charm slot in, and maybe a few more passive points, because even at this level, like, it's pretty versatile. You can focus a bit more on damage, you can focus a bit more on life, at least the way I've gotten to the point of my passive tree. So yeah. Like, gonna hit 7k life if I feel like it, but I'm not sure it's gonna be entirely necessary, considering things die pretty quick. But on top of that, we do also have almost block cap thanks to the chest we're using. And I've still got to finish off my fire resist up to this point, a little bit uncapped. I was gonna maybe go for spell suppress cap, but that would have taken me a few extra points, and then I decided, fuck it, I'll just kill things faster instead of taking suppress cap. But that can be something you do, and then on top of like fortify and shit, you'll be a pretty thick character while doing a fuck ton of damage. So we are built around replica Alberon boots. I think I've made 1 or 2 builds with these in the past, once when they first came out and they weren't very expensive and not many people knew how good they were, and then maybe once when they were expensive, I don't remember, but for the most part, you know they're good. They've been around for a while, and you know, the market fluctuates. If they're very expensive, then pretty hard to get in on them, but if they're cheap, you know, it's not too hard to make a pretty solid build around them. But we're using the classic combo of Strength Stack with Iron Fortress, which gives you a lot of strength bonus, grants 3% melee fizz per 10 strength, and then we are using Iron Will to convert all of that strength into spell damage, for the bonus that is, and then using Crown of Eyes to convert all of that spell damage into a fuck ton more attack damage. So we've got something like a 1000% increase attack damage, and that is most of the damage of this type of a build if you build this way. Because essentially what we do is then just like travel, get strength, and all you really need is a little bit of extra, like, you know, either crit scaling, or you can go without crit scaling altogether, but then all you need is a bit of, you know, extra like quality of life in the form of attack speed, crit, and life, stuff like that. We barely have any actual increased damage on the tree whatsoever. It's all coming from this little combo. And the Iron Will, of course. I am then using a Paradoxica. Like I said, all you need for... Actually, let's have a look at the skill first. For the skill, it is a fuck ton of extra attack damage, so 240 base is pretty huge. You then have 70 more with your main hand weapon, and then it uses your offhand weapon attack time. So the attack time there being 2.23, while this one being 1.3, meaning that this one doesn't really have a downside. Imagine your Paradoxica has a 2.2 attack speed. That's pretty insane. And you can do it, like I said, with a Frost Breath, or do some other combos. You can have a very easy combo of a Brightbeak if you don't, you know, feel like crafting something particularly spicy in your offhand, but the result is that you can have basically no downside to having much slower weapons. And it does hit with both weapons still, so don't be fooled thinking, oh shit, only the damage here matters. I mean, technically we're not doing much scaling here, but it does end up hitting with both, so it's only counting this attack time, but it is still hitting with this weapon, so it is still a portion of our damage. And as you can see, my main hand hits for 900 to 370,000, and my offhand hits for 500 to 205,000. So the beauty of the strength stack that applies damage to both our weapons is that we don't really lose out on any damage on either weapon. If you were doing, let's say, Brutus Lead Sprinkler, you would have to have an offhand that does something else extra spicy, like strength stack as well, that also does a bunch of attack speed, or yeah, you'd be losing out on a bunch of damage. So you got to make sure you're kind of dual scaling, or if you're doing just like a regular hitting weapon, like a big fizz weapon that's very slow, your offhand should probably also be a really hard hitting but much faster weapon. So this is kind of an easy way of taking care of this dual strike style problem, and getting the benefit of like both slow and fast and dual stacking pretty easily. It does have to have two different melee weapon types, so keep that in mind. So we can't just have like two swords. I went with a claw just because it will be the fastest thing possible. But you could do, something else to it a bit slower of an extent. This one has a synthesis implicit of 6 attack speed, and then all you do is an essence until you hit crit multi, lock the suffixes, and veil, and then that's all there is to it. Very easy item to craft. The Paradoxica, however, is just a bit of extra multi when enemies nearby, so I wasn't really sure if I should even go crit in this build because it is hard to get crit multi and crit with the way I've scaled, so you could easily go non-crit, ignore all crit scaling and get precise technique. Make sure you get accuracy that way though, and you'd probably have a pretty similar result in damage in the end. So Crown of Eyes, we are using just strength in other places, so very basic glove that's just got strength, and then I was veiling until I got that with some life on it, so pretty fucking easy to do. Still only using 1 additional attack strike at the moment, but I will probably conflict orb that to 2. So currently in the character and most of the clips you just then saw, I had 2 extra attack strikes, so in total 3, thanks to the passive tree as well. I did use Ancestral Call to level, but you could also have this extra attack once you conflict orb this, or you can, if you really feel like, attack with Ancestral Call just pretty much all the time for extra attacks, but for the most part, our Chaos Pops are what do our clear, so you don't need to attack too many extra times. Then have a Strength Stack belt. This base was only like a couple of Divines, Essences until some good shit happens, just some resists, lock suffix, veil once again, and then the real kind of... actually, I'll just talk about this real quick. First of all, I did a Astramentus, which I think might just be sitting around somewhere. Yeah, this Astramentus here, just a perfect Astramentus, costs like 80C with Tribal Fury, so I was running this thing up until like level 90 maybe, and it can be an endgame amulet. It's very close to something like this, but this is like pretty similar in stats. It's just a little bit better, but then you can also have a good suffix, and I grabbed a crit one because it's very cheap. This thing was like a divine or two, but the biggest versions of these builds have a crit multi one instead, so attributes and crit multi. Those are very expensive, like 20 to 40 divines, some shit like that, minimum. And this one's just very cheap and can be a bit better than Astramentus. The problem will be tainted anointing it. That's going to cost like fucking 5 to 8 divines. And my anoint in this build is probably going to be a 3rd curse. So Whispers of Doom, and I'll get around to doing that eventually. But yeah, the more expensive side of things for the build is chat basically bullied me into doing a helical ring. So a bit of extra budget for the first time. This ring is from Heist. It gives you extra suffix and then more potency of your suffixes. So the base for this was 40 divines. Not very hard to craft something like this though, once you get there. So just deafening essences of strength until you get a couple of resists. That's what happened here. I then had nothing else on it. I locked suffixes and I unveiled with that extra fire and chaos, and then just needed to craft life. So it's not super hard to get to this point. There's a cheaper version as well. You can do, I think, a cogwork ring, maybe what it's called. It'll be a little bit less strength, and it's only like 1 or 2 divines. Once again, you can get to a similar point, just a bit less resists and strength. But since we got that one, I decided to also use Calandra's Touch for the first time ever. It's like 30 divines at the moment, and thus just mirrored this ring. So yeah, if you don't do these sorts of helical rings at all, just do basic rings, you'll be down like 60 strength in the end compared to my character, a bit less resist. I mean, it's honestly not a big deal, and considering that most of what you would have seen, I would have been at like 2.1k strength, and considering I also still don't even have a charm slot, I can still get another 100 strength or so. It's, yeah, anything over like 2k strength, this thing is going to be pretty crazy, but, the more the merrier. And speaking of the charms, my charms at the moment are a little bit of strength, percent, and then fortify, so that's where my fortify comes from. Power charge on crit, just to smoothen out my crit chance a bit, and then strength and int. I do also get power charges from Assassin Mark, but it's going to be a bit inconsistent against single target and stuff, so may as well get that power charge on crit since it's pretty easy to get with a suffix. And then the last one's probably just going to be like a small strength int strength int 1. So we'll probably do like 5% strength and then like 30 strength and int, because the perfect ones are like 300 divines, but smaller ones are going to be like, you know, a couple of divines, nothing too big. And as for the passive tree, what we've done here is a efficient training, so that converts all of this into strength. It is worth, I don't know, a good couple of 100 points or something, as you can see at the point of my scaling. That which was taken, that gives a bit more melee fortify as well as strength. So the main goal on this one was just percent strength, but a bit more reliable fortify too. We then have just some crit multi. Pretty much all my crit multi is going to be coming from a few dual sockets, because I got fuck all elsewhere on the tree. So a bit more crit multi there, a bit more crit multi there. And split personalities, one that does strength and accuracy. So with this style of passive tree, it gives us 63 strength and 510 accuracy, and this one gives 63 strength and 63 life. Not very expensive ones at the moment anyway, you know, 1 or 2 divines for this, like 100C for this. And then a lethal pride. There's a bunch of different ones that can do strength, percent, flat strength, crit multi, life, all kinds of shit. This one in particular, I picked up that does 5% strength, 20 strength there, 15 multi, 5% strength, 20 strength, and intimidate. You know, if there's nothing good here, probably don't take these nodes. They're not that good. If there's nothing good there, you probably wouldn't take the frenzy, because I'm currently not sustaining it in any meaningful way except for blood rage. And then mana reserve is kind of a bit weird. There's not too much for me to do, so in the end I picked up Arctic Armor. I'm using Punishment on Blasphemy so that my Chaos Pops go off real nice, since I'm an Occultist with that. So I took Punishment for my Blasphemy. You can instead do Despair if you want, but I'll end up self-cursing Despair, and that's when I get my last Anoint. You could also do the Balance of Terror, so that Wither comes up with Despair very reliably. At the moment, my Wither is just coming from this, and then also the Totem setup that has Withering Touch. So it's not going to be very reliable. There's a big difference though. I can go from like 100 million to like 200 million DPS with max Withers going off all the time. So realistically, using one of your dual slots for Balance of Terror definitely makes sense, but currently I've held off on that and it hasn't been too necessary, so it's not a big deal. But I might end up doing a Balance of Terror still, because there's no better way of applying Wither than just self-cursing Despair and doing that. The rest of the setup: Punishment on Blasphemy, Arrogance with Precision, the Totem setup as always. We've got Blood Rage, Assassin Mark, Mark on Hit, Life Tap, Haste and Val Haste, Despair and Frostblink, and then the main links here are Dual Strike, Volatility, Multi-Strike, Ruthless, Void Manipulation, and Crit. And I only just put in Multi-Strike in the past like level. I was otherwise running around with Ancestral Call this entire time, just extra strikes and only hitting one time, because that's usually all it really takes, and it's pretty clean, snappy gameplay. And then lastly, as far as my MTX are concerned, we've got ourselves a Witch wearing Demonic Body Armor with Demon Wings, using that new Supporter Pack hat. And yeah, looking pretty spicy, I think. So with that, hopefully a bunch of really large Uber boss kills for the next video, and thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.